I had an urge, and the monument I saw was called This Is the Place Monument. This Is the Place Monument was erected to commemorate the area where the predecessor of the founder of the Mormon Church, Joseph Smith, arrived and said, "This is the place where we will settle." Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon Church, was a Grand Master of Freemasonry. The Nauvoo Temple, one of their biggest, or if not the biggest, I'm not fully educated on that, had as its spire, its weather spire, it had a angel, and then it had the compass and the square, a Masonic symbol. It is a well-known fact that a lot of the Church of Latter-day Saints symbology came from Freemasonry, as its founding father was a Grand Master of Freemasonry, and so were many of the others. This monument, therefore, is Freemasonic, just as the origins of the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church, came from a Grand Master of Freemasonry. That monument was 66 kilometers walking distance on Google Maps from the space, the exact location where Charlie was shot. And I don't know, as I am not there, but I get the sense that if someone were to take that route and measure it piece by piece, you might find it comes out quite close, or 66.6 kilometers will bring you to a certain location of that monument from the location where Charlie was murdered. I don't know why God asked me to do that. I don't know where it came from, but I did, and I saw it. And for those who don't understand, 666 is the number of the beast, the number of Satan. CERN fired up on September 10th, and its logo is 3 sixes intertwined if you pull it apart. Charlie was killed on September 10th, and he is 66 kilometers on the spot walking distance from the nearest obelisk type structure that, to the one speaking, for all it is representing the settlers of the Mormon Church, is deeply connected to Freemasonry. I believe by now that most of you, if not all of you, will have seen or heard of the murder and assassination of Charlie Kirk. For those of you who don't know who Charlie was a political commentator and influencer who was conservative in his approach, but he was a deeply devoted Christian, and he believed deeply in free speech and finding the truth and justice to the best of his limited and all of our limited human capacity. Charlie was murdered by a single shot from a sniper. It struck him in the neck on September the 10th, and I saw the horrendous and traumatic footage of his death, as I'm certain many of you have. Charlie was a father to 2 young girls and a husband to a wonderful wife, a very godly and feminine woman. And I firstly want to say my prayers are with the family, with the children. I can't imagine my own children being similar ages to Charlie's, the impact that it would have, that Fritzi, my wife, would have to return home and tell them, or explain as they were present, watching when it happened, why that had happened, and that I would not be coming home ever again. So my deepest love and condolences to Charlie's family. For those of you who have watched me for a while, excuse me, you will know that I perceive that the left wing and the right wing are both wings of the same bird. And the body of that bird has some very beautiful elements, but some very corrupt, dark elements. And those corrupt, dark elements are affecting the left and the right wing politicians through blackmail, through banking systems, through spiritual degradation, temptation, through psyops, through places like Epstein Island, where the powerful and the wealthy are lured into the temptations of the flesh, and then video, more than likely, is taken to keep them under the control of that core corrupted element of the bird that the two wings support. When I say that, I say it as I perceive that Yeshua, Jesus Christ, came to set humanity free from attachment to duality. When we attach ourselves to the left wing or attach ourselves to the right wing, the attachment to these ideas do not ensure right, compassionate action at any given moment. If anything, I have witnessed and I have engaged with people that the death of Charlie, which was so violent and traumatic to see, that his death has revealed that that truth is prevalent. For many, instead of standing by a necessity of a human virtue, that we can have free speech and open debate without being violent to one another, that we can exchange ideas, we can argue ideas without descending into physical violence. And any form of civilized society is built on men and women who were emotionally and spiritually mature enough to be able to have dialects that conflicted with one another until we reached a consensus for building the society that we all rely upon. I have seen many celebrating the violence, no sympathy. I have seen many taking tiny sound bites, which you could do to myself or anybody who has spoken a great deal online, and twist them to suit your narrative. And all of this is being done to try and destroy the character of Charlie. And I believe, as he was a noble man who believed in free speech, he would defend your right to those opinions. But I draw the line at defending violence. No human on earth deserves what happened to Charlie. It was violent and it was grotesque, and it is not your fault that you have been lured by the fallen world and your fallen body into celebrating the death of a father, a husband, and a political commentator. It is not your fault. but it must come into focus in awareness that it is not acceptable. It is never acceptable. A human's intelligence can be animated by spirits, energies. If we allow the energy of spirit of the fallen nature, the lower self, to animate our intelligence and try to justify violence, to say they got what they deserve as they held different opinions and views than what you do. If we allow that spirit of violence and division to take a hold in humanity and have a solid grip on animating the intelligence of humanity, you would see the earth and humanity scarred and scorched in a way that it could never recover from. And we should pray and thank God that a different spirit has a hold of humanity. We live in an age that has been set up by the last great empire. That last great empire was the British Empire. And the British Empire has its scars, it has its dirty laundry, it has a lot of dark memories and historical records to answer for. But it is also in the history of humanity, the very first empire to eradicate slavery. It was engaged in it, but it was the first empire to eradicate it. After thousands of years of endless slavery around the world, where the technologically dominant had absolute control and power over their fellow man. And had the British Empire not been taken a hold by a new spirit, a spirit of compassion and empathy and love, then the world we live in would be profoundly different. And so the spirit that animates your intelligence when you applaud violence and bloodshed is something that you must become aware of, as if it ever becomes dominant, humanity enters a non-progressive circular motion of violence and bloodshed and dominance. We become as animals. Instead of living by the rule of that new spirit we have pointed at with the love of Christ, the Holy Spirit, which took a hold in the hearts of the British Empire when they eradicated slavery. The man who wrote the song, or the poem that was adapted to the song Amazing Grace. I wish I remembered his name. I will put it in. He wrote that song as he was a slave trader who was awoken by that spirit of compassion and love that changes humanity. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. For the grace of God, there went I. So I know exactly what he writes about. I know that spirit changes our entire being. And therefore we must be very cautious to take ownership and responsibility when we ourselves are part of the problem. When our own unaddressed shadow, our own unconscious shadow, can allow us to celebrate violence, then what do you expect world leaders to allow to animate their intelligence if the people cannot set an example? The people who have less temptation, less pressure, less demonic attack, as those in positions of power who can decimate civilizations. The spiritual pressure and attack these people are under from the demonic kingdom, from the interdimensional forces that interfere with humanity, is profound. And therefore those who are in the class without those responsibilities can set the precedent by not allowing that spirit any space in the human story. Charlie was a polarizing character for many. And I know that many people will feel distress and will hope to say, this guy is right-wing. Why would he condemn people on the left who are celebrating? the death of this man, or who are passing reason not to have sympathy for his passing, who are making fun by taking sound bites and memes of tiny quotes completely out of context. One of which someone shared with me earlier today, where Charlie had said, "When I see a black pilot, I'll be concerned if they are qualified." Well, if you leave it like that, it sounds profoundly racist. As the founder of Africa's largest solution for special needs children in crisis, I am obviously not racist. And I know a racist when I see one. And that was not a racist comment. That was logic. Charlie was saying that due to the notion that airlines had said they will employ more black pilots. Well, why not employ people based on their capacity, their ability, and their merit? What happens if we say that people with red hair need to be employed as pilots, as not enough of them are there? We know we will not get the best skilled people flying our aeroplanes. And that is all he meant. And I stand by that. I look at the actions of a man, and I see somebody who created a youth empowerment leadership movement for black Americans that was bigger than any in the history of mankind. These are not the actions of a racist. I understand, nevertheless, that Charlie was no angel, and I don't agree with everything that he said. Initially, he supported Israel, and as I've said, if a Christian truly embraces Yeshua's teaching, they would know that the leaders of the state of Israel, the leaders of the West, and the leaders of the Middle Eastern nations and terror groups, if they all sat with Yeshua, he would draw in the sand and simply say, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." I know it sounds ideological, but if we lose focus, if it comes out of focus, we will never see a solution. What Yeshua said when he said that was, forget the knowledge of good and evil, forget the left and the right, forget duality. Your attachment to sides dampens your empathy, your love, your compassion, his love in you. What Yeshua was saying was stand with compassion. And nothing is greater than compassion. It sits silently above all things in the human story, for it ensures right, compassionate action. Religious thoughts and ideas in your head are completely irrelevant. In the moment whereby God enacts his love through you, there is no image. You are an empty vessel filled with a sacred love animating your intelligence. Imagery, theology, debates, all of that, it's not relevant to the presence of God being animated. Now, as I say all of this, I also wish to say that I am not certain if Charlie was assassinated by some deranged person. I would not know what their political affiliation is, left or right, or whether it was a blood sacrifice, a satanic sacrifice. And that will be hard for many to hear. But I have reason for saying that, and I will go into that. But before I do, let me address something. I have seen people sharing the video where Charlie's ring appears to move from one finger to the other after he was shot. But I also am aware that whilst giving his talks, as I have been shared another video, he has a very large hinged ring which he plays with and fiddles and opens. And when he opened that hinged ring whilst talking in a different college campus, it covered his pinky finger, his little finger. And therefore, I perceive that with the blurred footage that you are seeing, it would appear that his hinged ring came off. But I know many are saying it's a psyop. You're welcome to have that perception. And you will know if you see my channel, I am completely open to the notion that deception in this world, meticulous orchestrated deception, reaches far broader than the boundaries of the goodness of the average human being's imagination. Satan isn't limited by the goodness of the average man's imagination. It goes far broader and more sinister and deep than we can imagine. But nevertheless, I do perceive that Charlie died. The timing of it, however, is very alarming. And there has been some elements coming up which are interesting, such as their book was published according, unless there's a technological error, according to the screenshots on the 9th of September, which was about the shooting of Charlie Kirk, which is the day before he was shot. How did that take place? Presumably it's some AI nonsense that's been thrown out by somebody. But if it was published a day earlier, naturally, people are on edge. They're traumatized. They're looking, what's happened here? I want to go beyond that as well. And I want to look at the fact that it was the eve of 9/11. And interestingly, I just recorded a video about CERN. And if you don't know what CERN is, it's the Hadron Collider in Switzerland. And I'm going to upload that after this video. But given Charlie's passing, I thought I'd best put this video on for now. CERN is in search of the God particle. If you are a Christian, you will know that Lucifer fell as he wished to be God. He wished to have the powers of God. The God particle is humanity's search for those powers. But we have the powers of the divine to the degree that we are allowed them when we unite, when we surrender to the living God of all creation, in fasting, in prayer. And I know, as a working class man who followed the voice of God during a water fast, having no plans whatsoever to come to Africa, our Creator had seen that a certain toolbox and a certain stubbornness, I think, would be probably a key part, exists in the one speaking, that would ensure that we could build what we have here and are continuing to build. The living God's voice is real and present in our lives. CERN launched itself on September 10th, and the public were discussing it on September 11th. Now, in my last video, I pointed out that the Freemasonic societies literally built our society. The United States, the Washington, D.C. capital, the first cornerstone ceremony to begin the construction of that city, which was designed by a Freemasonic architect, was done by George Washington, who was a Grand Master of Freemasonry. So the US was literally built by the Freemasons. And whilst that was happening, the King of England at the time, who was a distant relative to George Washington, all of his children were Grand Masters of the Masonic Lodge. And so the Masons had power and control everywhere. And deception and lies seemed to be a virtue that they believed upon. To encapsulate it, the ends justify the means. However, when you agree to deceive your fellow man, you invite the spirit that is going to corrupt all things, the father of lies, Satan. And therefore, deception is never an option, even if well-meaning people believed it might be. As I am certain the intentions of the early Masons was not in any way satanic, but the fact they agreed upon deception as a virtue meant they would become corrupted, and indeed they were, by the synagogue of Satan, as it says in Revelation. The Masons are obsessed with numerology. 9/11, which is the day after Charlie was assassinated or murdered, is steeped in numerology. And one important element of their numerology is the 11. And the causality of that is the 11 is a building block of reality. It's a pyramid number. They see reality, they see God's creation as something that you can hack, just as Lucifer did. Something you can manipulate to your advantage, not through prayer and unity, but through manipulation of analyzing reality. And when you analyze God in reality, you are not one with it. You are an analyzer focusing on a topic of analysis. They recognize that this pyramid number, and it is a pyramid number as 11 times 11 is 121. 1, 2, 1. 111 times 111 is 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. 1111, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, and so on. It is a building block number of society. Of time, space, and matter. And they believed in manipulating that in their ceremonies and what they do as a form of black creative magic to taunt the living God. Remember, you are in a fallen world. It's why no one is to blame for cheering for violence. You are in a fallen body, in a fallen world. You don't know any better, nor did I once over. Sometimes I still don't when I'm clouded by emotion. But when I am in awareness in the presence of God, my intelligence is free. And the enemy wishes to keep us away from there at all costs and deep in our emotion and meanness. "9/11, the Twin Towers," I made an extensive talk about this, was filled with this numerological significance where it was 110 floors for each building. The 111th floor became ground zero. The first flight was flight 11. It's 111 days before the end of the year. And you can see this is just nonsensical pattern finding. JFK signed Executive Order 1111 to bypass the Fed. Then on the 22nd of November, 2211, he was assassinated several months later. 22 is a multiple of 211s, of course. In the UK, in Europe, in the US, they signed the armistice for the World War's end on the 11th minute of the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. Therefore, in every town and village and city, we see obelisks that came from Egypt. None of us ask why we have obelisks everywhere. Nobody questions why it's there. It's just some pretty thing. But even in villages, we have a war cenotaph to remember the war dead that looks like an obelisk. These obelisks are everywhere. And I, as a child, taken into the Cub Scouts, a precursor to train a child for the military, so you are aware, ultimately that's what it was, used to have to march with the veterans and the soldiers and go to this cenotaph. And on this sacred day, at the 11th minute of the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, was told as a child to send mourning, somber energy towards this granite pillar. This is not just fanciful nonsense. This is a deep esoteric belief of the Masonic societies. And that is why we must remember that the greatest resource on earth is not gold or water or oil. It's how humans think. If humans don't perceive gold and diamond as valuable, it has no value. The movement of human consciousness is the most precious resource, and that is what's being farmed, governed, and directed. And unfortunately, much of that is taking place at the hands of the enemy, of great deception, of interdimensional forces and beings that are interfering with the human story. We are being energy harvested. Charlie's death the day before 9/11 meant that yet again millions of people on this sacred day were channeling either grief and mourning into the sphere of the earth grid on which we live, or others were celebrating and salivating. Some of you, I'm not saying this community, but some online that I saw who I had to stop and check them. Someone who I saw they said they were going to open a bottle of champagne exactly where he was shot. They were celebrating violence on a sacred day. And therefore, the energetic element of it leads me to ask the question if Charlie Kirk was sacrificed. And I say that because he began to speak very potently against Israel. And as I've said often, Rothschild, the founding father of the state of Israel, a man who deceived, a family who deceived themselves into the riches that they have, which is documented fact, where they tricked the entire UK stock exchange during the Napoleonic War through carrier pigeons, making everyone believe Napoleon had won, and they bought the country for pennies to the pound. They tricked it. They played the most vulgar financial game you'd ever seen and became beyond powerful and wealthy. Rothschild founded the state of Israel, put up the money to build most of its opening elements, hospitals, schools. The Balfour Declaration was written to Rothschild to say, the Zionist state will be yours. Charlie began to question the events in Israel after being a staunch supporter. He began to question, as he had been there, the events that took place, and whether or not a stand-down order had occurred, he even said, to allow this horrible attack to take place that has stimulated the destruction and genocide of the people in Gaza. He began to question the humanity of it. And as I have said all along, humans are fighting over images that they have imagined in their head. Israel is an idea in the head of humanity. That's the only place it exists. We are killing people over thoughts, not things. A thing is me, the sky, a tree. Those are things. They're from God. Israel, someone invented with their imagination at some point. And we've bought into that realm of human creation so passionately that we kill each other for it. And as that happens, the same loving awareness that is in the eyes of the pilot dropping the bomb is the same loving awareness in the eyes of the child being blown apart on the floor. The whole thing is one big demonic joke, and it's relying on duality. It's relying on us not recognizing he who is without sin cast the first stone. Transcend all of this arrogance that says, I'm right and I deserve to do that and you're wrong, so you deserve this, and just find compassionate grounds to interact and integrate with one another. I see the way you raise your children. It's very beautiful. I raise my children that way too. Can we start from here and take our arrogant thoughts and ideas out of the way and ensure that that continues so they can do the same? A complete reset of the mind of man is what Yeshua wanted. A spiritual rebirth, to be born again. The Apostle Paul hijacked that, yes, and it's become a little bit misunderstood somewhere along the lines, but ultimately we are supposed to, here and now, see the world without language and memory, with pure, potent, loving awareness, so we can have the right compassionate action of our Creator animating our intelligence. Charlie spoke out against them. Rothschild the family has gone to great lengths to distance themselves from the Freemasonic lodges, but are ultimately in charge of it, and were, since the only records that show a Rothschild joining the lodge exists, that wealth and power corrupted the entire system of Freemasonry. You can see it through little hints, the way by which they governed the London Stock Exchange, the way by which their bankers bailed out Donald Trump when he was nearly bankrupt. The power they have over humanity is unbelievable. But their beliefs are also quite surreal and unbelievable, such as human sacrifice, like 9/11 was. The ends justify the means. Let us kill all these people because it'll redirect human consciousness in a direction that's more favorable for us to control and bring about what we want. Charlie's death will change the landscape of the US and therefore the world. It's without a doubt the case. When I see somebody murdered on the eve of 9/11, and yet again the public is in a state of distress come 9/11, knowing their obsession with numerology, as I've gone through here, briefly touching just some of it, the JFK scenario, the last brutal public assassination, I think, of the US, really, that comes close to this. Signing Executive Order 1111, the pyramid number, and then being assassinated on the 22nd of November. It's all symbolic, and you have to rethink your entire view of reality to understand that we are being harvested. Our energy is being harvested. Whatever duality we choose to attach to and create conflict and suffering for is completely irrelevant to the ones who are harvesting it. They don't care about the idea of Israel. They know it's just a thought in another species' head. They know this, but they know that it can, at least due to our severe attachment, create war, as it creates separation, and separation creates conflict. Charlie was shot on the eve of 9/11. Now, I say this with hesitation. As I say, September 10th, it's often been a date for things. They started CERN with its logo 666, clearly a Satanic project, on September 10th. Many nations joined and declared war, World War II, September 10th. Charlie's death, September 10th. These are precursors to create a certain energetic state on a day that they perceive taunts the Creator and therefore for them is a sacred day. Just as 11/11 and signing the armistice and having everybody offer somber energy into these granite pillars. Now, yesterday, and I say this hesitantly, because it's very loose, but I was praying in the morning. I'd been fasting up until the day Charlie was murdered. I was fasting as it would happen. I, when praying, had an image that I should check how far the distance is from where Charlie was shot to the nearest Freemasonic monument. Now, these days, the Church of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormon Church, has some very beautiful human beings within it who love God, who serve God. And I grew up, not in a Mormon family, but with Mormon friends living nearby, and they were wonderful human beings. And I at present don't have any Mormon friends in my circle and so on, but I do know that people inside this religious system are often very beautiful, very loving. I searched and saw that the nearest obelisk-type monument, as I perceive this, these obelisks are part of an energy grid that humanity does not fully understand. Our energy is being taken in a way that we don't understand. Fear and horror is the highest possible want. Conflict and war is the most favored energy. But anything will do. This requires a very broad release of any previous belief in your reality and what you've been trained with from school and so on. But we are being energy harvested, is the perceptions of the one speaking. And these obelisks and monuments have something to do with it. They are channeling the energy into the earth grid. And that is why the demonic forces exist, not purely for fun, but to extract energy, to serve the masters that they serve, which wish to be as God. I've spoken about this at length in other videos. I had an urge, and the monument I saw was called This Is the Place Monument. This Is the Place Monument was erected to commemorate the area where the predecessor of the founder of the Mormon Church, Joseph Smith, arrived and said, this is the place where we will settle. Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon Church, was a Grand Master of Freemasonry. The Nauvoo Temple, one of their biggest, or if not the biggest, I'm not fully educated on that, had as its spire, its weather spire, it had a angel, and then it had the compass and the square, a Masonic symbol. It is a well-known fact that a lot of the Church of Latter-day Saints symbology came from Freemasonry, as its founding father was a Grand Master of Freemasonry, and so were many of the others. This monument, therefore, is Freemasonic, just as the origins of the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church, came from a Grand Master of Freemasonry. Why that is? Well, if you've built Washington, D.C., and you want to start building every other city in America, it's going to be quite obvious that, hey, this secret society is building everything, and we're not in on the club. We don't know what's happening. This is the perception I hold. Again, I re-emphasize, it doesn't change that those living under that system today are godly people, some of them, no doubt. Just means that the origin of it was deeply connected to Freemasonry, and the symbology surrounding much of it, from the robes, the square, the compass, is from Freemasonry. That monument was 66 kilometers walking distance on Google Maps from the space, the exact location where Charlie was shot. And I don't know, as I am not there, but I get the sense that if someone were to take that route and measure it piece by piece, you might find it comes out quite close, or 66.6 kilometers will bring you to a certain location of that monument from the location where Charlie was murdered. I don't know why God asked me to do that. I don't know where it came from, but I did, and I saw it. And for those who don't understand, 666 is the number of the beast, the number of Satan. CERN fired up on September 10th, and its logo is 3 sixes intertwined if you pull it apart. Charlie was killed on September 10th, and he is 66 kilometers on the spot walking distance from the nearest obelisk-type structure that, to the one speaking, for all it is representing the settlers of the Mormon Church, is deeply connected to Freemasonry. And so I don't know if Charlie was sacrificed in a satanic ritual or if he was assassinated. I don't know if JFK was sacrificed in a satanic ritual or he was assassinated. I don't know if those who died on 9/11 were sacrificed in a satanic ritual or died in a terror attack. But I do know the very fact we live in a world where we can't be certain is a very important space for meticulous, orchestrated, organized deception lives inside our society. And that deception reaches far beyond the boundaries of the average man's imagination's capability. For our innate meekness and gentleness and goodness makes it very difficult to comprehend that we would ever sit down around a table and meticulously orchestrate deception. But people do this from all walks of life. I know because last year I had attempts on my life. I had people trying to harm the children in our care, and they were pastors, fathers, nuns, politicians, who had all surrendered all the resonance of faith and mercy and justice and love for the pursuit of wealth and money and worldly power. And of course, by the grace of God, I am still here and we won that battle. But there is another ongoing, which I will share with you all soon. Nothing we won't win. Nothing we won't win. Charlie, however polarizing, however much you agreed or disagreed with him, was a man who achieved much. And I know in this world you cannot achieve that without discipline. A noble man goes into the public square and says, debate me openly on my stance. It's a noble pursuit to dare to do that. A man who creates mankind's history has never seen a youth leadership program for African or Black Americans as large as what Charlie Kirk created. These are actions of a man with something about him. It doesn't sound much like a racist. And I know racists when I see them, and I did not see racism. I saw very potent topics. I saw them being addressed incorrectly, bad use of language at times. But I also, as the guardian of nearly 300 children, or the founder of the organization that is guardian to nearly 300 children and rapidly expanding, the biggest in the world of this kind, all of which those children are not my ethnicity, they are all African. I want a world where they never see violence celebrated. And I want a world where all of the problems that are causing the extreme struggles that we see in the US, for example, with marginalized areas where neighborhoods are in a specific state, where men have no understanding of family value and are abandoning families due to the pressures of whatever it is, poverty, addiction, drugs, culture, whatever causality. I want all of that raising up and putting on the table so we can start organizing it. Because that's the compassionate thing to do. Because I don't want to see people suffer. And if you're committing a crime, you're suffering. I know, because I've raised street children, street-involved children, boys who were rapists and murderers, the most impossible characters to love you'll ever meet. But we love them and they've become good young men. They've become very solid members of society, some of them. Some of them have made me a grandfather, in their words. I don't know how I feel about that, but but I believe in free speech, bringing all topics to the table so everyone can sit around without emotion and organize them so that we bring an end to suffering. And I feel that I saw the same in Charlie. And I respect that. I guess I have nothing more to say. I have many questions, as you all do. But my understanding of numerology, the fact I predicted the world's worst tsunami in modern history, publicly, when the Japanese tsunami hit, through following a Masonic numerological pattern, not through prophecy. The fact I said there will be a huge natural disaster on that date, but I don't know where. And sure enough, entirety throughout that year, I remember it well, 2011. 22/2/11, Christchurch hit with a huge earthquake. 11/3/11, tsunami hits Japan. 11/4/11, the aftershock. 11/5/11, Spain. I remember it so well. I saw the code. I saw it was a numerological plan. You can say, well, this is a weather event. No, it runs deeper. I think many of you will know. Many of you may not, but therefore expand, if you are Christian, into the understanding that there is technology in Satan's hands that is profoundly powerful. And deception runs beyond the reach of where your imagination, through arrogance, might cut you off from looking. And so I leave you with this. The organization I built was not built through thought and analysis or attachment to the left or the right. It was built through, let he who is without sin cast the first stone, opening up into that field that Rumi described, out beyond your ideas of wrongdoing and right doing. There's a field, I'll meet you there. That field allows us to be in a space where the Holy Spirit can organize our intelligence to live from a lighter space of right, compassionate action. And from there, in blind faith, the prompts that you hear from God, if you follow them in the life of the one speaking, give birth to a phenomenal foundation that I believe is a tree that many will sit under the shade of that I will never see. But I am certain we have started a planet-wide movement for invisible special needs children who are suffering in ways that humanity has no idea how bad it is. Millions of them, just alone, isolated, waiting to die. It's horrendous. But what organized that was not education, analysis, planning, research. It was the Holy Spirit speaking to the intelligence of the one who is here speaking now. And in blind faith, obeying that direction. And here we are, without a plan. We have arrived somewhere quite beautiful. So I believe we should all seek to be spiritually reborn, as Yeshua called it, to be born again. And when we can, without attachment to emotionalism and ideas and thoughts which create separation, which create conflict, we can be lovingly aware. And another looking back can be lovingly aware. And in loving awareness, we will guaranteed find common ground and connectivity with one another. For we will all be humble. There's nothing more humble than loving awareness, embodying a human. Pure loving awareness, nothing else. In that space, there will never be a conflict until thought comes in and suggests to the intelligence of the body, or it triggers emotion which stimulates the intelligence of the body to create a conflict and a battle. In loving awareness, it will never occur, for it is pure, unadulterated humility in human form. And it is there God so guides the humble. That's where we should come from. And therefore, it's not your fault if you've celebrated this violence, because you're in a fallen world and no one gave you an instruction book. You're in a fallen body and no one gave you an instruction book. And the system's tilted against your favor. It tries to keep you in that space so that we keep having wrong action, and it's harvested the energy created off the back of that. But above all, I say rest in peace to a great young man who changed a great deal in this world. And to be able to have the discipline to pull that off is evidence of honor and nobility. And those who are home, not your fault, but hooked and addicted to entertainment, to drugs, to alcohol, to mindless entertainment, to pornography, to lies, whatever it may be. You need to transcend all of that, or you will never create in this world anything of substance. And therefore I recognize nobility in another man who is disciplined. And that nobility comes from our Creator. And so rest in peace to a father and a husband whose life was taken by whomever. But no matter whoever the details are or are presented to us to be in time, whose life was taken by Satan. For only Satan would possibly be as grotesque and violent as to shoot an unarmed innocent man for saying words in public that other people do not like, or potentially for criticizing elitist powers in the world that we are not supposed to criticize. My love and prayers with his beautiful girls and his wife and those nearest to him, his parents, grandparents, the whole family. Rest in peace. May God's love heal all. Those who celebrated the violence, those who mourn and grieve, but especially his little girls who will never see their dad again, because the devil animated the intelligence of a man or woman to pull a trigger. Godspeed and rest well, Charlie. God bless everybody.
I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my